Welcome to our blog today. Today we're talking about advice for caregivers. Now, caregivers serve such a complex role that this, of course, is going to be just a snippet of the learning and essential knowledge and skills that you as caregivers really need to have in order to have a effective caregiving relationship and a happy caregiving relationship. So in my vlog, I highlighted a couple of things that are really important. One is self-love, and that as it relates to self-care, because in the world of caregiving, often we hear people who are burnt out, frustrated, distressed, overwhelmed, and they really don't know where to go next. So we want to give some insight into that in this little bit of time that we're going to spend together today. Additionally, we also hear from caregivers that they feel unsupported often, and particularly in Huntington's disease, there seems to be a real lack of support groups, and that groups really don't know what their function is. Sometimes they think they're a fundraising group when they've named themselves a support group. So there's this whole other side to caregiving that's really about how do you actually ask for help and how do you be of help. And you'd think as human beings, and we're all human beings, that this would be a relatively straightforward process. Nope, turns out that it isn't. So my advice for caregivers, really, we delve into in a couple of online courses that are available now. One is called Support for Caregivers, and the other is called Taking Care of Mom and Dad. And in that, my co-facilitator, Dr. Howard Rankin, and myself dive into sort of these key concepts that I'm going to cover and give you some information on today in this bit of time that we're going to spend together. So first of all, the question that you're asking yourself probably is, why am I a caregiver in the first place? We give support to one another because it fulfills a need in us. Sometimes we do it because we feel like there's nobody else that is in a position to take on the role. And I was just recently with my mom, who is the caretaker for my father. And I said, wow, Mom, it must be really, just difficult and complex and, exhausting. And she actually said, well, it's actually not that challenging, that she thought that my dad was pretty easy to get along with, which was it was enlightening for me to hear that she is a, fairly exceptionally balanced caregiver. So maybe or skilled caregiver. So maybe that's why she looks at it differently than what I see other people struggling with. The essential skills of caregiving sort of are around these global subject areas. One is 5 fundamentals of human connection. So why is it that we need connection with other human beings? Why is that even important? What do people in crisis need? And why do we need to stay connected in these really important ways? And how is knowing these ways help us to be more effective in actually achieving what it is that we're trying to achieve? So just to highlight a few of those, the first thing that we need for human connection is to be non-judgmental. And in being non-judgmental, we look at things without judgments. We really don't cast our opinion of anything on anybody else. It's very difficult to do in this day and age because what we see with media all the time is people judging one another. Everything's a competition, everything's an evaluation, you're never good enough. And so from a non-judgmental perspective, you just look at people as they are and you accept them as they are. And not that you don't encourage them to be better, just like you would encourage yourself to be better, but you really do look at whatever problem they're bringing to you from a non-judgmental perspective. This allows you to actually hear the entire story of whatever it is that they're experiencing. One of the other fundamentals of the keys of human connection is authenticity. So are you an authentic being? Are you genuinely there with genuine care and concern for the other person, or can they kind of tell that you're, inauthentic? And glib is often a word used to describe people who don't really care or don't really know how to interact with other folks. And again, we've been trained to do this. We give pat answers to things for people instead of really thinking about what they might need. So keep your chin up is often one that people say when if they hear that somebody else has a problem in their life, so in chronic and terminal illness, this is a really critical component of human connection. We want to tell somebody that something is going on with us, and what we hear from them is, oh, things could be worse, which just shuts down that communication. So As a caregiver, it's important to have the skill of being able to be authentic, which is to say sometimes maybe you don't actually know how somebody else is feeling and that you don't understand how somebody else is feeling, but that you'd really like to sit with them through this experience and help them to feel better about their circumstances or to be more successful in their life and their day-to-day functioning. Another key to human connection is trust. Do I trust myself to do what I say I'm going to do? And do I trust others to say what they're going to do? In this disease, mode, oftentimes we don't trust ourselves. We are betraying ourselves through illness. So what I specifically mean is that we can say we're going to do something and then we don't end up doing it. And maybe it's disease related and maybe it's just because we didn't feel like doing it that day. But those are self-betrayals. And also when we have that undermines trust. And so if our caregivers or as caregivers, we're doing things that is eroding trust, not showing up to support meetings, not showing up when we say we're going to show up, not doing the things we say we're going to do. How do we get back on track with that fundamental human connective skill so that we can have a really excellent relationship with the person that we're caring for? So those are some of the ideas in the hub of these five fundamentals of human connection. Another area that we can look at is the 7 keys to effective support. And why it's important to know these keys is because some of these keys are natural to us, that we just do them all the time. Some keys are easier for other people. Other keys we need to really pay attention to. Oh, that's a key, and I need to learn that key in order to be able to give effective support. And effective support makes it easier to support. There's less conflict, more understanding, more flow in the relationship. So a few of these keys to effective support, and you'll recognize them, is giving, having a giving spirit and coming and giving the best that you have to give in each exchange, in each interaction. So that can be in a group of 2, or it can be in a group of 7 or 8 or 10 if you're in a support group. Why this matters for caregivers is that if you're giving care to somebody else and that you're not in a giving spirit, it's really difficult to share with them and be able to give them sort of ideas and inspiration of maybe what they could be doing differently. In a support group, what we see when people give is, of course, they're sharing their story. So if I'm sitting and listening, I can maybe glean some information from that story that would help me to get through whatever it is my challenge. And another skill or another key to this effective support is facilitation. And facilitation is the things that caregivers, I think, do most naturally often, is how do you actually make the plan happen? So if you have a plan with the person that you're caring for to help them to do meal preparation, how do you get them to the grocery store? How do you make sure that the groceries are at the house? Are you providing some childcare for them so that they can go to a support group meeting? What are all these things, the tasks that we can help make happen? Are there times when you give money to people in order to help them to facilitate whatever it is that they're doing? I know that we do that as parents, and it's just like we don't even think about it, right? We help our kids to go to swimming lessons, and we help our kids to have tutors. We help our children to get lunch for school, those things. So really this is just just translated to a different, age and stage of life. So if maybe the person under our care is a young adult, maybe the person in our care is our elderly parent, but any of those roles, this really facilitating what it is that they need in their day-to-day life to make their life effective, helps to shore up those human connections again and make them more successful, because it builds trust when we help to facilitate things, and it builds an effective support person or the underpinnings of a support group. When we come up with really great ideas and we don't help to facilitate them, it's frustrating for people. And oftentimes we generate through brainstorming wonderful things, and we're just like, oh, we could do this, and oh, we can do that. And I'm sure you've been in groups where this is the case. And then you go, well, how are we going to make that happen? And everyone kind of looks at each other blankly like, oh, I don't have any idea. So then everyone gets their hopes up and it's all this exciting plan. But then it's the air is let out of the balloon because there hasn't been the facilitation hasn't happened. So when you're coming up with these great ideas for the people that you're caring for, really take some time to flesh out this facilitation piece and make sure that it happens in a timely manner, whatever it is, the things that you've come up with. Another key to effective support or support groups is identification. And identification is where you can have some understanding with that person about what they might be going through. I know that in our online course, Dr. Rankin and myself talk about this part of why it's important for people who are supporting to have some experience with the thing that they're giving support to, because they automatically have some sort of trust established or a respect and understanding that it takes a long time for other people to be able to establish. So in the Huntington's group, for example, if I know somebody is gene positive, or they've had symptoms in their family, or they've dealt with suicide in their family, or all the complexities that go along with chronic and terminal illness, I'll much more likely listen to them first. It's just this human connection thing that we naturally do that, and we give them credit for having already gone through some things in life. Whereas somebody who's coming as an outside support who doesn't have that experience, although their heart's in the right place, we might not right away give them the latitude to be able to support us. We might go, you don't really know anything anyway. So the importance of being in this caregiver, the advice for caregivers role is, if you've got some experience that you can bring to the table, then please bring it and share it. And if you don't, just remember that it might take a little bit of time for you to establish that the underpinnings of understanding. But really, identification is this finding the 1% of things that you can actually agree on that you've had as shared experience. Oftentimes when I come into a new group, I'll just talk about parenting. I won't talk about the Huntington's thing first thing out, because a lot of people who are in these support groups or in supporting situations have children. And so that's something that we can find, common ground on. And right away we can, make a connection, which is a beautiful thing to do. And then you can step into these other things. Another key essential to support and support groups is encouragement. So are you encouraging other people to do better, feel better? Do you encourage yourself to do better, feel better? And encouragement, the root word of that is courage. So how are you developing a heart of courage? How are you helping the other people that you're supporting and giving care to develop a heart of courage? And often in chronic and terminal illness, we know that this is the biggest challenge, because we see people losing their ability to do things. How do you help them to build courage in circumstances that might be challenging? And encouragement is a big part of that, saying you can do it, you've got this. What are the things that you already know how to do? You do that so magnificently. Can we see you do that more often? Part of being a really good leader is understanding that people have strengths and weaknesses, and playing to their strengths. This is used often in management. Great management of great companies is they don't, work on people's weaknesses a whole big bunch. They really focus on people's strength and get them to do more and more and more of what they're really good at. So when you're encouraging people in your group, or encouraging yourself as a caregiver, what are the things that you're really spectacular at, and spending a lot of time doing that thing. Another piece that falls into that for advice is get help. Don't caregive on your own. So who's on the team? And this falls into a third sort of area that's practical concepts for caregivers, which again, Dr. Rankin and myself go into in more detail in our available courses online. It really is, we know it's incredibly complex, that there's, health challenges and changes in people's levels of functionality, and it's very fluid. So day to day things change, moment to moment things change often, so it's being able to ascertain what people's skill level is or ability level is, and going with the flow and helping them to, again, just have the best day they can have. But coming from a position of that you have really a lot of self-love through your own self-care. It's shown in many, many studies that caregivers worldwide have a real struggle with being able to maintain their own wellness. Incredible amounts of stress are reported, and that people who are taking care of others with Alzheimer's, for example, things like that they report a change in the quality of life. And there is so little education available for people who are dealing in these really complex areas. And in our culture, which is, not necessarily most people haven't been raised in this day and age to actually take care of other people. You know, they kind of get their kids taken care of and then they're off to live their own life. In other cultures, that's not the way it is. So the wisdom is passed down from generation to generation about how to do caregiving. So this is really something that people need to relearn in order to be successful in this role. And the other advice for caregivers is, you know, looking for giving yourself the recognition of why you're doing this really important role. You know, we hear that I don't get any satisfaction out of this, or there's some satisfaction, but I don't really know why I'm doing this. You're doing this because it's an incredibly important thing to do. We have a need as human beings to contribute, and this is one way of contributing. Now, it might not be how you typically think of contributing, like, you know, giving at your local food bank, or, you know, going and building a house for Habitats for Humanity, or whatever it is that you've been doing up to this point. But this is really the highest contribution, taking care of another human being on a one-to-one level. So want you to give yourself a pat on the back for doing that, and encourage yourself to continue to become wiser about, you know, how to live, how to be in this role. And becoming wiser will allow you to become stronger, and becoming stronger will allow you to avoid being ill, for example, just to remain well yourself so that you're able to provide care for as long as you can. Advice for caregivers also is that we know that there are things and lifestyle things that you can take into consideration to help the people that you're caring for to live a better life. So are they doing everything that they can to be well? How do you encourage them to be well? Well, part of that is knowing that there's certain things that in lifestyle that help people to be well: nutrition, sleep, exercise. How do people think primarily? What's their emotional sort of, you know, space? Are they primarily happy? Or are they primarily a grump? So just even knowing those little nuggets of information, and then how to move people to more happy states, how to move people into predominantly happy, how to move people into being predominantly self-sufficient, how to encourage them to be self-sufficient, and how to not get into taking over way too much stuff that you maybe don't need to take over. Other practical concepts: how do you build a great team? How do you take care of conversations around medical care and legal issues? How do you approach these subjects not only with the person that you're caring for, but how do you approach them with, maybe you have siblings, you know, so maybe more than one person wants to help in certain areas and there's conflict, which often happens. We see that an incredible amount. So getting some further education about how you can actually build a team. Some of you might have that because you played team sports when you were growing up and you understand the concepts of building a team. But if you haven't had that insight, then you can come and join Howard and I, you know, for some more information about how to do that effectively. So the overall goal in this is that you build a life that's happy for yourself and for the person that you're caring for, because really that's why we're here. So how do you get the foundation under you to be happy? And the things that we think, or I think definitely are most important in terms of advice for caregivers. And again, if you could be taking care of somebody that's critical or chronic or terminally ill, you could be taking care of children, any time in life when you're taking care of another human being. These are fundamental, important things to know. So there's specific keys to human connection. We've talked about a few. There's specific keys to effective support. We've talked about a few of those. We've talked about practical concepts a little bit. And again, these courses are available online, and there's in-depth learning that you can have from those. Some great resources that you might want to check out that can help you. In the meanwhile, if you don't feel like taking a course, Gary Chapman's Languages of Love, the 5 Love Languages, is a really good starting point to find out how it is that people interact with one another. How can I build up the love that I feel for the person I am caring for? Because from that position of love, all great things come. And fundamentally, what we want to do is to continue to refine our ability to think in ways that are proactive and happy and being mindful of being well. And so We encourage you as caregivers. I encourage you as a caregiver to, first of all, give yourself a pat on the back and to find the love within yourself, to care deeply for yourself, to learn what you need to learn to be a great caregiver for yourself and for the people that you're caring for. And remember how much value you have and in life, and think about that. How much value do you actually have? And then encouraging other people to really find the value that they have. And I'll just end with sharing a story about my mother, who I think is the most incredible caregiver. She's into the great-grandparent phase of caregiving. But I've learned a lot of lessons from her. So one is that she takes great care to make sure that my dad, who is almost 80 and has Huntington's disease, does everything that he possibly can do still to contribute to the family. So he takes out the garbage, he helps to peel potatoes or carrots, or he fried up chicken the other day for me because he knew I was coming for a visit. And he gardens still. He removes snow. He removed snow from the roof this winter, and he was 79 years old this winter. So he's out there doing the work that 40-year-old men complain about. And he has Huntington's disease, and he looks like he's drunk a lot of the time. So she allows him to be the man. And he is also encouraged to be the man. So, making decisions that she includes him on making the decisions. They make decisions together. And now I know this might not be the case for you, but one of the things also is if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you're taking away too much responsibility from people of the things that they can do, and they're not doing those things anymore, they won't be able to. So encourage people to do things for as long as they can. Also, my mom encourages my dad to walk on the treadmill every day, and he's pretty self-directed, but sometimes he needs some encouragement to do that. Sometimes the equipment needs to be fixed, and that he might not be able to get the settings exactly right on the treadmill, for example. So she'll go down and make sure that that is set up for him. And these are the things that help him and allow him to remain well and to remain active and to keep his balance, like his coordination, which is something that goes often in disease and as you age, to keep his strength so he continues to feel good, and to boost endorphins to his brain so his brain function is improved through these really simple activities of her being an encourager and a facilitator. And these things I'm sure that you're doing in your life. And if you're not, look for opportunities. It's like, where can I do these things that would improve my loved one's life just that little bit? Because if you woke up every morning and you were a little bit happier and they were a little bit happier or a little healthier, a little more well, what would that actually change in your life? And what would it change in the life of the person that you love? And what would it change in your children's lives and in your grandchildren's lives and in your great-grandchildren's lives? Because at this age of life, I can tell you that my mother is now helping with great-grandchildren, and she's so considerate about what everybody might like, and just so joyful about encouraging even the babies. She encourages the babies to walk and to coo and to just, they're so sweet and so special and so lovely, and those things, opening yourself up to feeling this connection with other humans and encouraging them to grow and develop, and how wonderful they are at every age and stage. It feels incredibly good for us to hear that when we hear, wow, you're doing a great job and you are incredible and magnificent and thank you so much for taking care of other people. That feels good. It feels good to be acknowledged. Those are wonderful things. Remember that when you're caring for other people. So my advice for caregivers as we wrap up is love yourself incredibly, incredibly, magnificently well every day. Think about how incredibly magnificent you are, how important you are, and then take that knowledge, that knowing about how important you are, and share that with other people, especially the people that you're caring for. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.